Welcome back to our next episode on the cultures. So, Jenny, today we are going to continue our discussion on identity. And you and I have been having a chat on, if I can call it the lost identity of the ancient cultures. Today we sit in an environment where a lot of our culture we're having to rediscover. And as we're rediscovering, we're finding some really interesting, fascinating, useful information. That is meaningful for the environment we live in today. So yeah, over to you. Tell us more from an Australian Indigenous cultures perspective.
It's interesting because just because of the fact that we have a diverse world and a diverse culture, that dilution of who we are and our belief systems and practices has been diluted somewhat, without sort of assigning any real reasons why. And what's been difficult over the years, like I've spent my life trying to understand, because I was brought up in a Sydney metropolitan area, and to gain back that deep knowledge of who we are and our practices. I've had to do some research because of my location, as opposed to maybe somebody who's living in a regional area and can benefit from living in the middle of it.
Like you, I grew up in the big cities of India. But for me, I find it doesn't matter where you grow up, big cities or the smaller centers. We've all been conditioned to question our own identity, question our own culture because of the education system that was set up for us post independence. Questioning is good because it keeps you rational, it keeps you focused. However, with questioning should come a bit of acceptance as well. And we've just grown up thinking that our culture is not good enough. A lot of the people today are going back to those cultural texts and going back to those cultural beliefs and finding, no, hang on, this is exactly what we need in today's environment. Somebody has been following our conversations, and she said, I've been questioning a lot of my beliefs over the last few years, and I'm really enjoying listening to these conversations because it's giving me a different way of looking at things. Those are the good things that we should all be in touch with, regardless of the culture, and promote that. It's that humanness that we've talked about many times.
Yes, and it's really interesting, when you made that comment about maybe not being good enough. I think in my journey and discovering all these wonderful practices and beliefs, what is consistent through everything that I read, and I bring it up every time we speak, are the core values.
Yes.
But when you actually deeply connect with the values that are coming out of your culture, that's when you can, when it's simple things like respect and reciprocity and responsibility, when it's really simple things like that impact everything you do, you say, and how you have an influence in the world, that's pretty big.
Yes, absolutely. And look, there is we're talking about organizations that are for purpose. We're talking about kindness in everything we do. We're talking about kind leadership. The word kind is becoming very prevalent in the corporate sector today. It's all over LinkedIn, for example.
Yes.
However, that's the values that you refer to. Those are the values that when you pair things back to the humanity, those are core values that that these cultures teach us.
Yes.
So Jenny, on that comment that you made about having grown up in the bigger cities and away from the centers, how authentic do you think the culture is in one of those internal, what would I call, a regional center, for example?
In the regional centres, I think they're absolutely authentic because they're being brought up totally enmeshed in the beliefs and the traditions, and being surrounded by proud people. They may be living in difficult circumstances, and we know the mental health aspects and all that. That's a big concern. But I think if we live our life in with a positive mindset to be brought up in a regional area would be a great thing to experience. You know, all the other mental health things aside, if you know, if we can do something to make an impact to change that, it would be wonderful.
So Jenny, I have a difficult question for you. You know, post the voice referendum, I checked in with a few people about, you know, who had voted no, to see why they voted no. And what became really evident, and I was quite surprised, I shouldn't have been, but I was. What became evident was these deep-seated assumptions that people have about the Indigenous culture, which is quite far from the reality, but that is what we read about. Those are, you know, the news items that we see. And you mentioned the mental health issues and all of that. How does the culture support the growth and the integrity of humanness? You know, do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and I don't know that there's really a great deal of support at that deep level, to be honest with you, because those individuals where they're feeling like life is not going to improve and they're completely deflated by what's happening, they would typically be a bit unaware of, where do I go? Where is there a safe place where I can be 100% transparent with how I'm feeling and what I'm doing, where they could truly benefit from that. Now, you know, I also spoke with people, and I've got some very dear friends that voted against the voice, and they had their reasons for it, and I could understand that. But it really, on an emotional level, it was actually a very difficult time. Still continues to be. A little bit, because you sort of, you know, we're waiting for what is it that's going to change? Yes. Because we're not going to improve or reduce the gap without some change happening, rather than it being just a political conversation that goes on for whatever reasons and reoccurs for whatever reasons, but nothing changes. Growing up, and you know, you can understand people will see things in the media or wherever in conversations, and I know as a child people used to say to me, oh, Aboriginals get free houses, Aboriginals get free loans, they get this, they get that, and I thought, where is this stuff? You know, it's just stuff. And thanks for sharing. I know that was a difficult question, and I know what that means to you, so thank you for sharing. And the reason I ask is because, you know, from my point of view, one of the things that I believe in, and something that I've been grown up with, is that we can't wait for the world to change. You know, we have to take action. And my something that was very, very strong in the parenting that I was given by my mom and dad was this notion of, you have to do what you have to do. And you only have control on your actions. And you have full control on your actions. And if you've given your best shot, then don't worry about the result. You know, and that's a direct lift off from a text that my parents believed in, the Gita. And that's where it comes from. You can only control your actions. So with that philosophy in mind, I guess the short question is, what can we do? Because yes, politics happens, governments will come and go, but at the grassroots level, if we can change one person at a time, then, you know, we start a chain reaction. Absolutely. And with what you're saying is, you know, what you can change and what you can't, that just, then it comes down to resilience, which is what I actually think, you know, as being an Indigenous person, that we should be very proud of. I think setting up podcasts like this, having a rational conversation where people can speak their mind, whether it's like today, whether, you know, you thought that it was going to be difficult or not, it can be difficult, but to have the conversation is then taking everything to the next step where people can actually understand the impact the hows and whys.
Yeah. And your business is pretty much focused on this, isn't it?
It's exactly why I set up my business, because I came to a point where I thought, well, government's tried for a couple of 100 years and we're not looking any better than what we did back then. And I just thought, well, let's not sit back and blame government. Let's not sit back and blame anyone, to your point. Change what you can. So I decided to set up my business, Indigenous Women in Business, where I'm working with corporations and government to help them understand our culture.
Yep.
Snippets, so it's ongoing cultural awareness, snippets of that. And then, on the other side of that, I'm connecting more with Indigenous networks and communities to find out how I can help, how I can mentor, how I can put people into entry-level jobs.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because for me, I came to Australia as a grown-up adult from India. So I knew there's a bit of adjustment that needs to happen. And one of my favorite memories is when someone asked me, oh, you have universities in India, because I was telling them about having done my master's and all of that. You have universities in India? I said, yes. And we go to university sitting on an elephant. So
oh, goodness.
After that, he knew to be a little careful and a little more emotionally intelligent about the questions he asked me.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm used to it. And, I've always been, people who know me that, they know that I'm very proud of who I am and the values I stand for. And I've always taken that approach of it's a conversation, because just as I want to know about other people, I would love to share about where I come from as well. However, that's for me, because I came from outside. I expected to get barriers. But the Indigenous cultures, by the name, you are Indigenous cultures, and yet you have to, go through these conversations and bring down the barriers. And I think, I don't know how I would deal with it.
And that's back to being resilient around bringing down the barriers, because there's ingrained beliefs from generation to generation. Okay, once you understand that, then you know that it's a long haul journey. Then there's people migrating to Australia. So I think the wonderful thing with that is that we get to know the different cultures and experience the foods and have those conversations. So I actually find it very exciting. I love the waves of different parts of the world that have come and joined us in Australia. So it's something that will be going on forever. And as we've said before, if people usually react out of fear, and that's fear of the unknown. And if the cultures are unknown, then there's the first thing is, should I be threatened by this?
And you're so right there, because first of all, yes, we are absolutely blessed to be in Australia, where you're encouraged to be who you are, right? And secondly, it is about that education. And this is something I've always found. I've found Australia as a culture to be open for, some self-introspection. Provided we can have conversations, provided we are also open to the fact that the other person wants to know. Because quite often we come with our minds closed and go, no, they're going to push back. And then there's a bit of a, tension there. So you're so right. Education, that's what it is all about. Opening our hearts, opening our minds, and having a good conversation like this one, Jenny. Yes. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure as well. Thank you.
Till next time.